All right. Well, welcome to the Vision Maker Media Film Festival at Native American Films. It's been an exciting couple of weeks here. Today we're talking about ATTLA, and we have with us the filmmaker, Catherine Axley. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
And she's an independent documentary filmmaker and editor. Her films have been played at festivals, including San Francisco International Film Festival, the Documentary Film Festival in New York City, Harlem International Film Festival, Banff Center Mountain Film and Book Festival, and the United Nations Association Film Festival. Her latest film, ATTLA, is the recipient of Best Indigenous Film at the 2019 Bend Film Festival and winner of Best Documentary Feature at the 2019 American Indian Film Festival. Catherine holds an MFA from Stanford University and documentary film and video. Her BA in history and ethnicity, race, and migration from Yale University has most recently taught filmmaker in residence at the University of Kentucky. We also have with us Amanda ATTLA, who's Koyukon, Athabascan, and Yupik. Did I pronounce that right?
Koyukon.
Koyukon? Koyukon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I always want to know how to pronounce those Alaskan names. Amanda is the daughter of champion dog sled racer George ATTLA Jr. She's worked for 18 years as a Native culture and art instructor and a master Athabascan artist culture bearer for the Alaska Native Heritage Center. She's a coach and a judge for Native Youth Olympics, Arctic Winter Games, and World Eskimo Indian Olympias. And as a culture teacher throughout many Alaskan school districts, Amanda has traveled across Alaska as a motivational speaker on the issues of alcohol, drugs, and suicide prevention. Recently, Amanda has worked for Alaska Care and Husbandry Instruction for Lifelong Living, ATTLA, as an Athabascan culture expert and has traveled to villages in interior Alaska to teach students and communities. Wow, that's exciting. Very, oh my goodness. And Amanda's nephew is going to be here with us today, Joe Beifelt, who was in the film. Oh my goodness, I was looking forward to meeting him, but he's taken ill and he will unhappily not be joining us today. I had lots of questions for him. But just to catch you up with him, he's teaching fourth grade now in Husla, is that right?
Huslia.
Huslia. And he had been, he did teach at least 1 year at North Pole, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. So how did this documentary film come about? Did Grandpa George call and ask Joe to come and learn about mushing? And then Catherine just luckily ran across this opportunity, or how did that happen?
Yeah, well, so I can dive in first. I want to thank you, Barbara, so much for moderating, and thank Vision Maker Media for having ATTLA at this year's first online Indigenous Film Festival. It's really exciting for us to be part of it, and I'm so excited that Amanda could join us today as well. So I first went to Alaska because I have a friend who's a state representative, and he was working with many others on a bill to recognize Native languages as official languages of the state. So I initially came kind of with an interest of potentially making a short film around that. But one thing led to another, and I found myself in front of an article about George, not about his past, but about what he was doing then. which was that he had started a youth dog mushing program in honor of his late son, of Doobie's younger brother, to introduce dog mushing as a form of cultural revitalization in his village of Huslia. So when I read that, I was really intrigued, because here was this man he was 80 at the time when I first read about him, and he had accomplished so much throughout his life and was this champion dog sled racer. But he wasn't finished, he wasn't retired, and he was kind of starting a whole new chapter of his life with kids. And I just thought there was something so powerful and interesting about that. So I stalked him as much as I could online, watched archival footage, read about him. And then I eventually was able to speak to him on the phone, and was completely starstruck, but was glad that he was kind of interested in potentially being part of a film project. So after I met him in person, I knew we had to do this, and I was so excited that he was open to it. But it wasn't until after I met him in person that I found out that Joe was going to be part of this year. Like, at that point, I had not yet known that George was, had been in contact with Joe and was seeing if it may be possible for Joe to come back to Huslia to train him. So as soon as I found that out, it felt like a filmmaker's dream. Like, here's this mentor relationship between great uncle and grandnephew, with a journey of training for a race. So we were lucky that Joe agreed to be part of it as well.
Wow, I can imagine. Oh my goodness. And that was like serendipity, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was one of my first questions when I watched the film. I was so moved by it, because I mean, just the whole thing. I mean, the country, it's rugged country. And I felt for them and the dogs, and I could just feel the passion. Just through the film, I could feel the passion from George and Joe and everybody involved. How was it for you, Amanda, when the filmmaking began and suddenly it's like Hollywood there, huh?
Well, being raised with George ATTLA, can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Being raised with my dad, we had throughout my whole life. So from the time I was born, my parents said I might as well have been born on a dog sled and rode it on into fish camp, because that was my life. But throughout my life, like the first, we had Spirit of the Wind in 1979. So that whole year, that's all we did was Spirit of the Wind. But since then, we've had multiple people approach my dad to do a documentary on him, and he didn't have it in his heart, and he knew what the people's intentions were, and so he just didn't have so Catherine, this is the story that I have been told by my stepmother. So Catherine had called and talked to my dad, and so my dad just, okay, there's this young woman that wants to do this film on me, and and he just kind of put her to the side, like everybody else, put her to the side. And something happened within my dad, and he said, "Hey babe, you pull the name of that girl that called." And so my dad reached out to Catherine, because I don't know if he knew what was coming, but he needed to tell his story while he was alive, and that he needed to. One thing he told me when he was dying was, "My girl, you have to tell the truth after I'm gone. You need to write a book and tell the truth." And So, you know, Catherine, I'm one of the kids that got interviewed. I actually was there for all of his winnings. We traveled all over the place, from Minnesota to Michigan to Canada, all over. And so very, very fun life, very on the go every week. And I'm very, very blessed to have Catherine in our lives and make this beautiful film about my father and my nephew.
Oh, yes, I have to agree. It was a blessing for me to watch it, by the way, Catherine. It was a beautiful story. And, you know, it had the adventure in it too. It was almost like it wasn't just your run-of-the-mill documentary. It had excitement and a little suspense. And I really enjoyed it. And the dogs, I really appreciated the dogs.
Mm.
So you hadn't spent any time in Alaska before you began shooting this film, had you, Catherine?
No, I had just been in Southeast Alaska for part of a summer before before actually you know and just I know I am a person who stutters, so that will occur sometimes. I do stutter, but yeah. So Southeast Alaska is no interior Alaska, and certainly not in the winter. So my first trip to Huslia was for our first shoot. And you know, so I was in grad school on a grad school budget. I was able to do a Kickstarter to raise money to pay for the flights, but but for my friend and for myself, you know, we did not invest in the cold weather gear and all of this. So you know, so we arrived in Huslia, you know, in the airport, which you know is out on the field, and we were really lucky that that George's partner and other members of Huslia and other friends and family in Fairbanks lent us cold weather gear, because you know there's no way that the coats we had, we were living in California at the time, you know, that they would keep us warm. I did go out and buy a hat before going to Huslia, but I learned like within the first 2 days that synthetic fur does not match real fur. So I was lucky that I got to borrow a hat with fox fur, and then you know I really recognized the you know the superiority of real fur to keeping you warm. But you know we were so fortunate to be welcomed into George's cabin. We stayed with him each time we filmed in Huslia, and you know it was just, I mean, some of my favorite memories are when we had the camera away, you know, when we were just visiting and going to birthday parties and you know eating, and so I felt really fortunate to be welcomed in that way.
Well, you did answer a couple of the questions I had in mind about the warm clothing. I was going to ask, did someone loan you some clothes while you were there? Because I know you couldn't have been prepared
Yes.
for the kind of 30 below weather, you know.
Yeah, so all of our warm weather clothes were loaned. We were very lucky. And then I did do a little bit of Google searching ahead of time, so I did bring a lot of those hand warmers that you know, like the chemical ones, because they became really important for just like taping to the batteries of the cameras, to keep the batteries warm so that they wouldn't drain quickly. But we did have a shock like the first, I think it was like the second or third day we were there. You know, we were outside kind of, you know, getting used to the snow, and I had set up the camera, and this was a expensive camera. This was not my camera. This was, you know, I was lucky to be in grad school where we were able to use their camera equipment, not my camera, worth more than you know I can, you know, I can think about right now in this moment. And you know, I set the camera up on the tripod, and you know, just kind of getting a shot, and I walked away to kind of look to see, you know, perhaps maybe we should shoot over there next. And the camera fell, and the camera fell, and a piece of it broke. So you know, here I was, I did this Kickstarter where we had lots of you know, we had lots of supporters who had sent us money to pay for the flights and everything, and I was thinking, wow, we have 12 more days for this shoot. Like, what if we can't shoot anything? Like, what if we have to shoot on our cell phones, which, you know, then were not as good as they are today. But so I was just like frozen in terror. So we went back to the cabin, but you know, George was wonderful in that moment, because he was calm, and you know, kind of eased our fears a little bit. Let's take it step by step, you know, we'll see, like, let's not rush to conclusions. And so luckily, everything worked with a little bit of duct tape, but that was an early early fear in the first shoot.
Oh my goodness. It was probably got so cold that it easily broke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, what kinds of foods? I saw the dogs being fed, but really, what kind of food did you eat to keep yourself warm?
Well, I guess to keep us warm. I mean, we were lucky that George's partner cooked a lot for us, and we had a lot of moose meat, and what else did we? I'm trying to remember. A lot of eggs. You know, we were able to go to a New Year's potlatch and another birthday party where, you know, there were so many different food options those nights. You like feasts, like huge feasts. So yeah, I mean, it is, for me, it was really important just to like eat all the time. It was really helpful just to stay warm. But I should let Doobie speak to Amanda speak to what the dogs are fed, because one thing I'll say is that dog food that you see in the film looks delicious. It also smelled delicious. Like that, smelling that dog food that George would cook, like, would make me hungry. But Doobie knows more what exactly went into those pots.
So we cook everything from beaver to sea fish to salmon to everything. Our dogs eat better than we do. Put it that way. That's the salmon that we're feeding our dogs, Japanese pay $60 a pound for. But our dogs we just throw it to our dogs like it's nothing. So that's one thing growing up, that's people used to, you know, say, boy, you must be rich. Oh no, our dogs eat our money. Eat our food, you know. So yeah, our dogs eat better than we do, and they eat exactly what we do, from beaver, muskrat, swan, ducks, everything that you see on the land, caribou, moose, yeah, they eat better than we do. And
well, it looked really good. I saw the fish go in there, and I saw the rice, and I thought, oh my word, because I know my dogs eat bagged food, you know, it's natural food, but they eat like salmon and wild rice food. It's in their food. It looks like kibble, but that's what it is. And I thought, oh my goodness, you know, I wonder how much of that they have to eat in order to stay warm. And I know that running keeps them warm, but don't they get hungry on those long, what they called sprints?
Well, it's so when we're grooming our dogs, so we water them in the morning before, you know, that's like their morning coffee. They have their morning water, and it's usually it's a broth, you know, that comes from our fish. And so yeah, they eat that in the morning, and then they go out, and, you know, my dad would train his dogs, and when they come back, he'd water them again. And we do mix kibble in with it. And animate was my dad's number one dog food. It's $60 a bag, so it's the best of the best, you know. But we do add kibble with it because kibble has, you know, more vitamins than what our fish have. But they get about a scoop, a good scoop, you know, every day. You don't want to overfeed sprint dogs, because then you're hurting the dog at that point if they gain too much weight. And so, you know, it's like athletes being on a diet. You feed them good, you feed them the best of the best. And, you know, if you ever compare our dogs to somebody else's dog, and it's like I was saying, they eat better than we do. So their fur is just beautiful, and it shines, and they're just, yeah. The food we feed them is better than what we eat.
Yeah. Well, it sure looked it. It looked really good. And I thought, well, that stuff is hot, you know? And I'm thinking, they have to have hot food because otherwise it would freeze before they could finish eating.
Yes. One thing that we, you know, like when we were out dog mushing and stuff, one thing that my dad used to do is we did racks and racks, and I mean hundreds of fish, to where we would hang them, you know, just hang dry. And so my dad would actually cut those into pieces and throw them to his dogs. It's to our fish is more, it gives them a major boost of energy. And so just keeping, yeah, lots of fish and keeping them warm. The salmon up here is so rich that if you don't have crackers or something like that, you're going to get a stomach ache.
Really?
Yes, if you have never ate our fish up here, then you got to have some kind of crackers to soak up all the oils, because the oils from the fish it's like an orange color, and it'll be so rich that it's a orange red. It's that rich.
Ooh, that sounds so good. I mean, I have eaten salmon from Seattle and Northwest, but wow, that sounds delicious. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Well, so I was surprised at the various breeds of dogs that were in because, you know, and I heard you mention it at one point in the film about Huskies. You know, because I think that's what goes, you know, you first think of Huskies as the dog team. And when I saw all those dogs and their sweet faces, and, you know, I'm thinking, oh, they've got all sorts of dogs there, all different colors. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and you know, I think one thing. Sorry, there's a fire truck outside my window. One thing that was really interesting for me, you know, learning George's story, and having known really nothing about dog mushing, is to see how much changed from, like, during his lifetime. Like, you know, even you know, the practice of having sprint races in cities in Fairbanks and Anchorage really didn't start until like the 40s, and that kind of, as a sport with spectators, grew, you know, and really probably peaked in the 70s, 80s, right as the Iditarod kind of was started in 73, and now when you hear dog mushing in the lower 48, you probably think of the Iditarod, but this practice of sprint races being this kind of spectator sport in cities, you know, was something that really didn't exist before George's lifetime. There were sprint races in villages, but you know, they were less organized, and more kind of a way for people in villages to kind of see whose dogs are the fastest, right? But these dogs that were raced, when George was growing up, and be, before his lifetime, they were work dogs, right? They were not dogs that were intended to race. The race was just kind of a fun thing to do, during different holidays and festivals. But so these work dogs really were kind of these big, furry huskies. So it's really kind of, as sprint racing develops as a spectator sport, in the cities, and also does develop as a more organized sport in villages, that's when the dogs start changing and other dogs are bred in. Doobie would know much more about like who these dogs are, what sorts of breeds were.
So in the 70s, because we were traveling from Alaska through Canada into Montana, Minnesota, Michigan, up into Canada, down to New York, and then all the way back across Canada, and we would come home. And so when we were doing that, my dad loved horse races. Okay, my dad was a big, adamant person on horse races and greyhound races.
Wow.
So he loved watching them come out of the chute and go as fast as they possibly could, and he loved it. And so my dad, I'll never forget it. It was in the 70s, and I was probably like 6, and all the dog mushers used to come to our house and have coffee, and they would use my dad's trails, and they were talking about, I wonder what, if we bred a greyhound in, I wonder what would happen. And so I was 8 years old. My dad had bought a greyhound when we were in Minnesota. Yeah. And that's how greyhounds ended up here in Alaska, being bred into our dog mushing dogs. That dog had 18 puppies, and they were like little mice when they came out. And so that's how the first greyhound ended up being bred into our dogs up here in Alaska. If you look at the dogs now, they have really, really long legs, and that's where it comes from, is the greyhound. Then I was 7 years old. I had gotten beat for the first time in my life in Minnesota. I'll never forget it. Bemidji, Minnesota, I got beat by a golden lab retriever, and my dad was like, I am going to buy that dog. And I was shocked. I had never been beat before. I was kind of like my dad. I was shocked, and he's like, nope, we're buying that dog. And so he went to the people and he asked them, and they're like, well, that's our house dog. There's no way you're going to buy it. And so we all ended up, we go to Ely, Minnesota, which was our next stop, and there's that dog. My dad's like, I'm going to buy that dog. And I was like, oh no, because he couldn't stand it if I got beat. Mm-hmm. And how are we going to fix it to, get the bigger, better dog to beat, to win? And we ended up buying that dog in Ely, Minnesota.
Goodness, they sold it.
Yes.
Oh
and
my
we
gosh.
brought her home. That dog wouldn't run for my dad. It ended up being our house dog.
Well, that's what its life was.
Yes. The first house dog my dad had ever owned came from Ely, Minnesota. And so that's how German short hairs, greyhounds, all these other dogs. My dad was always looking to make the bigger, better, faster, stronger dog, and so many talks of how to make the bigger, better, faster, longer better dog. Yeah.
Lots of stamina. Oh
Yes.
my word.
And lots of traveling, it's my dad was always analyzing what was what and how he was going to make the bigger, better, faster dog this next summer and how we were going to bring this dog home. And so that was my life growing up, was listening to dog mushers, from my dad to Martin Boozer to Jeff King, all of them. They were all at my house growing up.
It must have been exciting.
It was.
Mhm.
It was a very exciting life. Today they couldn't do what I was doing as a child back then. They'd send me with a monster stack of homework and I'd leave school for 3 months, and then I come back to Alaska and drop that monster size pile off. But yeah, we spent a lot of time, whether it was on the road or on airplanes, going from spring carnival to spring carnival. So we did a lot of traveling.
Well, how old did a dog? I mean, you were in grade school at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How old does a dog have to be before it's ready to run?
Well, the first year is, so I was raised with over 100 dogs and over 100 puppies in the summer. And so one thing my dad, you want to talk about, he ran his dogs. I ran too. I would run from our fish camp down the beach, and my dad would go out in his boat and he would watch those puppies run on the bank of the Yukon, and he knew what puppies he was going to keep. And they're usually in a pen, for about 6 months, and then he'd tie them up. But he knew from the time they were puppies what was going to be a good dog. When they're in their prime, it's anywhere from 3 to 6 years old is their prime. And that's the best times in their life, is those times. And then after that, my dad always found them a good retirement home. And everybody wanted one of George ATTLA's dogs, so to have one of George ATTLA's dogs retired in your home, it was pretty amazing.
Right. What did they get the recipe for the food?
Right.
They had to feed them the retirement. You got to be fed very well.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, now, and another thing that you guys talked about in the film was the difference between that Iditarod and the sprints. And an Iditarod, that's like 1,500 miles. What that has to go on for days. So what do these people do in the meantime while they're running 1,500 miles or 1,400 and whatever miles? Do they spend the night here and there? How do they carry food along? Is someone there on a snow machine with them, or?
No, they actually have checkpoints up here in Alaska. Yeah, they do camp out. But I will say that the first dog races were sprint dog races before the Iditarod was ever even a thought. It was a bunch of guys in 1972 sitting around kind of laughing about the serum, and gee, I wonder what it would be like if we did a dog race from
Run to Nome.
Anchorage to Nome. And so, but the originating was sprint dog mushing. And so, like, back when I was growing up, it was on the TV, which was a big deal in Anchorage. It was on the TV, and on the radios, you could get on the radio and hear sprint dog mushing on the radio. And so in 73, the year I was born, this is why my parents said I might as well have been born on the dog sled, because the year I was born was when the first Iditarod was ever ran. And so, it's so where this all stems from is sprint dog mushing and a bunch of guys sitting around a table BSing about what they were gonna, it was kind of it was a funny joke for them. And it ended up being what the Iditarod is today. And it's actually, we're trying to bring sprint dog mushing back into Alaska because the Iditarod has pretty much taken over that, but that's what we're trying to do now is bring back sprint dog mushing, not only into, back into Anchorage and Fairbanks, but also throughout the state. And that's why my dad started the dog mushing program. And I'm actually in the school right now, and Alaska Gateway School District and Yukon Kyakook School District are the two districts that have actually are supporting young dog mushers and teaching vet science. We have a whole program, and this is all stems off of everything that my dad did with the Frank ATTLA Youth and Sled Dog Program.
Right. Well, I think it's wonderful how you let the kids run a sled with the dog. Hi, Tony. We've been waiting for Tony. This is Tony.
Oh, hi.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Tony.
Hey
I
there.
chose ATTLA. Don't know what else to say.
Well, he's a student at North Star High School, and he chose to watch this film, and I think he really enjoyed it. Have you heard very much of what we said, or do you want to ask your questions?
I heard a bit of it.
Do you have any
I did.
questions?
I do not.
Well, I'm sure glad you're here. I really am.
Me too.
I was going to
Trying to get
say,
into
we were talking
150.
about the pups and when they start running, and the kids, and when they start mushing, and I can't imagine it because it's so cold. And here they have the pups with their booties on, and the little kids there, with their hood down. I'm thinking, oh, it's so adorable, and yet it's so real. I mean, it's cold. And I'm from South Dakota, and when our kids are growing up, my family's a horse family, and my mother even rode a bronc. She would break horses and get on a bronc. Not me. But we would put little kids on like a goat, or sometimes those Shetland ponies can be rugged. Put a kid on one of those and it'll run, and kids can get hurt. So yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were a child and you first got out there on the sled with a dog.
So my first dog mushing experience, I was probably, I'd say about 6 months old. My dad was going to start me young. They'd wrap me up in a blanket and tell the dog to go. So I've been in one dog races since I was 6 months old. I would start throwing a fit as a baby, and my mom would get me all dressed up, and my dad would take me out on his training runs, and that's how I'd fall asleep. So yeah, I might as well have been born on a dog sled and rode it on into fish camp, because the year I was born was when the Yukon River Bridge was built. And so I spent every summer of my life in fish camp, and every winter traveling from one end of Alaska all the way to New York. And yeah, I've been dog mushing my whole life. My children now are dog mushers.
Oh my.
So you know, even though life has gone on, and but I live in a village, in a small village, and so our biggest thing is revitalizing our culture, and dog mushing is part of who we are, because before all of this we were nomadic, you know, we moved from place to place. So
Right.
dogs have been our life.
Mhm. Yes, you know, I think I equate dog mushing with Alaska, and I know that not all Alaskan people were dog mushers, but that I do think of it, you know, as part of the Alaskan culture.
It is before cars and everything. That's how we got around.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't matter whether it was summer or winter. It's Dogs were always a part of who we are.
Mhm.
It, it's our culture, and yeah, it's awesome.
Tony, what did you think of the film? What were some of your
But, I thought it was a great film. I like that it tackled some of the problems with uh, advancing technologies and how it's affecting natives, and how it's kind of forcing them to learn other things, and that they're forgetting how to do the things that they've been doing for generations.
the sound is low on your end there. Could you turn up your volume somehow?
Uh, I do.
I agree, though, about the technology, the fact that the dogs were sort of put on the rear after the snow machines were so prevalent.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what was the other part that you said?
Uh, the other part
The technology?
that it's kind of forcing them to learn all this other stuff and kind of making them forget what they've known for generations.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That what happened for generations, suddenly it's out of sight, out of mind. Or just um, it's almost like starting over.
It
I
is.
think a lot of tribes in the lower 48 are facing a situation like that, where uh, tribes are beginning to revitalize language and other arts. And
Yeah, that's what they raised me to do. Everything that I always say, I live, breathe, and eat my parents, because everything that I teach, every everywhere I live today, it's all about what they taught me, and how to pass it on to the younger generation, in order for us to keep it alive. You know, the language, even, it's you know, we're in the same boat as everybody down south. My dad was a fluent Koyukon Athabascan speaker, and so are all my aunts and uncles. But just like everybody else, I don't know my language fluently. I know words. My kids know words. They know more. I'm actually an Alaska Native artist, and so my mom has been grooming me since I was a small child, just like my dad with dog mushing. And so everything that my parents have taught me, I'm trying to I'm trying to give my gift to the world.
right. Well,
That's
and you are in so many ways, even as you help Catherine with this film. And I guess one thing I wonder is how the village responded to this film. What has been the response from the Alaskan people, especially those people who knew George ATTLA?
Yeah, so we so it's interesting because we because this first began as a grad school project. So I first had a 20-minute film that we shared in Huslia, But then, that didn't include it included a little bit of archival footage, but it didn't include George's life story. And so I just knew that there needed to be a longer film. So it was great to first share that first iteration in Huslia, after having filmed in Huslia, and then kind of share like, okay, we're going to start on this journey to try to make this longer feature film, which took a number of years. And then we were able to show rough cuts of the film to people who appear in the film, but also in Huslia, we did a community screening of a rough cut, just to kind of get some reactions. And overall, it's been a really positive response, which has been wonderful. That my favorite experience, like I should say one of my, because I shouldn't say one experience is better than another, but one of my favorite experiences throughout this process has been sharing the film with elders and with George's siblings, and especially with Doobie's aunt Rose, because it wasn't until that moment that I realized that a lot of this archival footage, a lot of Alaskans and a lot of elders had never seen before.
Right.
And what was so interesting is that, for a lot of George's family members and for a lot of Alaskans across the state, they were all tuned into these races in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but they were tuned in through the radio. They weren't watching them on TV. They were listening to them on the radio. And so the fact that this was an opportunity to share footage of races that they had listened to but had never seen, was just like, that was such like an exciting part of the process. And I was really, because I see Kelly asked a question in the chat about the archival footage, and we were so fortunate to be able to partner with two incredible archives in Alaska, AMIPA, which is the Alaska Moving Image Preservation Association, and the Alaska Film Archives at the University of Alaska Fairbanks Rasmussen Library. They have incredible collections of old race. I mean, they have all sorts of historical footage in Alaska, home movies, also like different sorts of old TV programming, and so having the opportunity to go through this footage and kind of relive history by just like sitting. Well, I guess I wasn't sitting in the archive. I was mostly watching things as they came to us virtually. But being able to watch that was like just such an incredible experience. And we also launched a kind of like a campaign to get home movie footage from other people, because we knew, in some of the archival footage we could see, oh, someone has a camera there, like I wonder if that person's like daughter or son is still alive and has that footage. So we did launch a campaign to try to get some more archival footage, because a lot of folks had a shot here or there of George, and certainly photographs. And to answer Kelly's question about just like the cost of archival, we were lucky that we got grants so we could pay for the archival, but we also were able to use grant money to pay for the digitization of some film reels, which also was like a super rewarding process, because that meant that some film reels that we were able to digitize, those are now available to other filmmakers or the other people in the public who want to just like look at this footage, because it's really important for us, of course, to preserve, to digitize, all the archives we can, since of course film reel and certainly VHS degrade over time. So.
And I just want to say something about that. We have been truly blessed. Catherine, there's actually parts in that film of my parents that I had never seen, of them sitting in the truck, laughing. I did a lot of crying the first time I seen the film. And then after the final cut, she had put more things in there of my parents, which was really awesome. Stuff I had never seen ever in my life. And so, especially those people coming out of, the woodwork to show different pieces to Catherine. And so, yeah, this film has been truly a blessing all the way across for the whole state of Alaska, because she has done an amazing job at getting things digitalized. And yeah, thank you, Catherine. You're awesome.
Uh, I'm glad to hear all of that, because that's, I cried in parts of it, you know. It's just, and I thought that George was, your dad was so real, you know. He was very real, and he, I think, gave us a little piece of his heart and his soul in his interviews there. And so I could see that his life was filled with uh, lots of joy, but the moments he missed with his kids, he regretted. And, you know, I guess it was the people in Alaska got more of him than maybe his kids did. And I think he regretted that.
Yeah, there's 9 of us. We have 3 different moms. I'm my mother's only child. I was the baby for many years. I was there during the big dog races and stuff. And yeah, he spent a lot of time away. Months, you know, many weekends. But me and my mom was his right-hand man. She was an amazingly strong woman. I can say the day after I was born, she was out feeding dogs and I was on her back. So, you know, it's yeah, I'm the one child out of all of my dad's kids that we're very close, and I got to spend a lot of time with them. My other siblings, not so much, because he was just starting out his career in the 50s. And my dad spent a lot of time on his trap line, you know, all winter long. So yeah, there was a lot. My dad was away from home a lot. Not so much from me, but from all of my other siblings. I was the brat. They'll
You don't
tell
look
you
like a
I was
brat.
the brat. Yeah,
No.
I can say chocolate milk, please, and they'll just cringe.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have a question here from Jocelyn Morales Reyes. And you may have already answered this one, Amanda, but she says, what was your favorite part of Axley's film?
To see my parents, I'm sorry, sitting in that truck,
Mm-hmm.
laughing together, like truly that was my favorite part. And every time I start crying as soon as
I
I think
remember
about
that. I remember that scene, or
that.
that clip.
Yeah, that was my favorite, my personal favorite. Just, I had never seen them like that in my life. So to see them happy and young, it was such a blessing. And I mean, Catherine just accidentally ran upon that, and that's creator truly doing his magic, you know. And yeah, because the film always runs through my mind, and I can close my eyes and I can hear it and I can see it. But that's the one part in there that is my ultimate favorite, is the parts with my parents in it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that those particular shots were, I think, the last pieces we got digitized. They were almost headed for the trash bin. I had done this trip to this to the home of this woman who had collaborated with George on a book years ago, and she was living in a retirement home in Northern California, and we got kind of like her old snowsuit and kind of some old photos and some boxes of things, and there was this film reel, and I think her daughter just wasn't even sure what it was related to, and said, I don't know, let me just throw it in here. And we, at that point, we kind of opened it, and we didn't really see anything on it was Super 8. We didn't really see anything on there. And in the meantime, throughout the making of this film, I probably moved like 4 times. So it wasn't until my old roommate had moved cross country, she and her boyfriend were unpacking, and he found that. And he was like, oh, let me actually look at this. And he saw that there were actually faces on it. So then my friend, and also a producer on the project, she sent me a text or called me or sent me a picture, and we were like, oh my goodness, that's not any face, that's George ATTLA's face. we had no idea. So we immediately shipped that off to a place to be digitized. And then when that footage came back, and I saw not only is it George ATTLA, but it's also Karen, Doobie's mom, smiling with him in a truck. I mean, yeah, I probably couldn't sleep for like a week after that, because seeing that footage and seeing how that came to us, like, how we had almost gotten rid of it, it just felt, it just one of these incredible, amazing experiences. I'm so grateful for that footage. It's just beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Well, I'm so thankful for this opportunity, and I wish that time would stand still long enough for us to have a much longer conversation. But I do want to thank you, Catherine, for everything that you've done and for attending here. And Amanda, it's been really wonderful to hear your story. Anthony and I have been looking forward to being able to meet you, and tell Joe that we missed him. I want to ask Alana if she will read the names of the people who are supporting us, our sponsors.
Hello to everybody that's attending the Q&A. My name is Alana Stone. I'm the project coordinator here at Vision Maker Media, and I just wanted to include who our major festival sponsors are, and that includes the Lincoln Journal-Star, Woodland Voices Flutes, the Lux Center for the Arts, Native America Calling, National Native News, Indigify, NV1, First Nations Experience, NET, Nebraska's PBS and NPR stations, Woods Charitable Fund, Humanities Nebraska, the Lincoln Community Foundation, Lincoln Arts Council, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Cooper Foundation, the Reese Foundation, and the Cherokee Nation Film Office, and of course the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And then for all the attendees out there, we do have the rest of the week until Monday of youth themed films on our film festival webpage, so please feel free to check them out. And tomorrow we will have another Q&A for Minnie's War Bonnet and Powwow Highway, as well as a youth filmmakers panel on Thursday that will also include Catherine Axley, who is on this Q&A as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shauna, Alana, and Amanda, and Catherine, and Tony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.